Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live podcast. Glad to have you with us today. Look forward to a time of discussion and exchange, and ultimately opportunity to seek and gain some wisdom. And today we will uh, be talking about regrets. And looks like we're having some technical difficulties. Stand by. Let's see if we can fix issue. Apparently, we're having trouble with LinkedIn. And so let's try and see if this is going to work and see uh, if we can get it going. All right. Apparently, it is going. So good to see that it's working. So, again, welcome to Wisdom Seeker Live. Glad to have everyone here. And as you join, I hope that you will take the time to share where you're joining from. Good morning, Karen. Glad to have you with us today. And look forward to hearing from you as we have our discussion. And so, just as a couple of reminders, please share where you're joining from as you join. And of course, your engagement is always valuable so please share your thoughts, your questions, and as we go along. Good morning. Welcome, Dr. Jasmine and Jasbir. Glad to have you as well. As I like to do, just let everyone know as a reminder how we see what wisdom is, and love to give the background on Wisdom Seeker. We see wisdom as a journey, and the journey starts with gaining some knowledge, and this knowledge can be gained in any form or fashion, and is not tied to any one activity. And it is just the first step. And contrary to what some would tend to suggest, is that it is this knowledge is wisdom, and it's not something that we tend to think of on Wisdom Seeker Live, that it's power, not my apologies for the distraction here. Technology is being a little bit challenging this morning. So, anyway, moving on, we start with knowledge and then move into understanding. And understanding is when we begin to take the knowledge and we internalize it and process it and begin to apply it in our day-to-day lives and our experiences. And so our knowledge becomes more a part of what and who we are, and then gain going forward and learn use of that knowledge in a good way. And then we go from there into a wisdom. And the big difference between knowledge, understanding, and wisdom is that wisdom is when we begin to see things outside of ourselves with a bigger picture. And that means that we begin to have a better perspective on how to use our knowledge and our understanding. And so we begin to be able to make better choices. And then for those of us that are of a spiritual mindset, we have a thought process that we seek to see things through God's eyes, our Creator. And as a result, we can see from differing perspectives, including understanding others and where they might be coming from, and make choices that are not based simply on our own desires and our own needs, but also the needs of those around us, and also the needs of the bigger picture of what we're a part of. So, again, It's a growth process, a journey, and that journey doesn't end with one time of gaining wisdom and then we're done. It is a process that we go through, and that process is hopefully ongoing, and that we really consider everything involved, and we grow from it each time and move forward. So, again, our topic today is regrets. So I look forward to some lively conversation, some insight, and us to grow together as we look at dealing with, avoiding, managing regrets. So welcome, Zaid. Glad to have you. Buntavi from Thailand. Glad to have you with us. Shafyul, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. If not, be sure and let me know. And Gladstone, glad to have you with us this morning. So, as always, I like to look at determining, understanding on our terminology. And way that we do that is to look at dictionary definition and so on. And so let's look at regrets. According to the dictionary, regrets feel sad, repentant, or disappointed over something that happened or been done, especially a loss or missed opportunity. Also, regrets, feeling of sadness, repentance, disappointment over something that has happened or been done. And so that's what the dictionary defines as regrets. Excuse me. And then I like to look at visuals. This helps us get an idea of our cultural perspective. And kind of interesting that a common theme as I looked up this is a lot of people holding their face in their hands as if to really process and work through something. Definitely see the regrets as a negative light, in that we don't like to have them, would be my thought. And I know that we all have regrets, and they cannot be completely avoided, but they're rarely positive. But that doesn't mean that something positive cannot come from it. So just some perspective. And I see that some of you have some thoughts on it. So let's go to your comments, because your comments are always valuable to us and helpful to understand what you're thinking. And so let's see. Gladstone, I believe, shares a thought. And he says, we regret the choices we made subconsciously. Conscious choices make us take responsibility. Definitely. And so it comes down to, at least in some part, choices and how we deal with regrets. And then, excuse me. And then also we have, let's see, bear with me. I'm trying to, again, work with the technology, keeps it interesting. And so let's see here. And believe this is Gladstone again, and that is, we evolve when we're done complaining, comparing, and regretting. Yeah, that gives us a chance to grow, no doubt. And glad to have you, Dr. Jesmond. And I know you're without audio, but I appreciate your commitment to being here and all. So thank you for that. And then Gladstone makes comments. Sometimes I get this feeling, one you regret that you have left, one you never regret having left, and one you regret haven't left as yet. Some of our regrets definitely come in different forms. some that we didn't do, some that we do, some that we should have done, and some that we still are dealing with. Uh, Thank you, Karen. I appreciate you being here and appreciate the kind words. So, regrets. One of the things about regrets that I tend to think of is that we rarely regret what we do. It does happen because sometimes we do something and the result is not good, and we go, oh man, I wish I had not done that, no doubt. But more times than not, our regret is around what we didn't do. And when I did a poll on LinkedIn just this week and talking about regrets, and I know that one of the regrets that we have is when we lose family. And in fact, with this poll, I shared a bit about having lost my brother coming up on a year ago and dealing with regrets in and around that. Fortunately, I don't have a lot of regrets because I had been intentional in my relationship with my brother. But because of the sudden nature of the loss of my brother, uh, always in the back of my mind going, wow, wish I had made it more of a priority. And had I known that I was going to lose him as I did, that possibly maybe make some different time priorities, spend more time with him. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from in regard to that. And I know, having lost other friends and family members over time, that we quite often go, I wish I had said goodbye. I wish I had not spoken to them that way, and so on. So that tends to be the nature of regrets as I see it. And I'm thinking, and you all please share your perspectives on it as we go forward. But I think that's the way regrets happen. So let's see here. Jasbir says regrets are the choices which did not get the desired results in life, be it career, relationship. That's very insightful look, Jasbir. Yeah, that we have regrets in relationship to the results of our choices, and it's certainly a factor. And so we need to really consider that as part of our choices. I think the maybe a question that we should utilize as part of our consideration is, will I regret this? Could it be that if I make this choice, will I have regrets in regards to it, or could it lead to consequences with regrets? Dr. Shama, welcome. Glad to have you with us. Please join the discussion as we talk about regrets. And as I was looking at this post that I did on regrets and the voting in the poll, it's interesting that one of the other expressions in regards to regrets is that it's a growth opportunity. And I agree with you that with those that have commented that way, that regrets can indeed be a growth opportunity if we pay attention and learn from them, certainly. Hopefully, we don't have regrets that that aren't that just go for naught and only become an area of maybe bad feeling and guilt as part of that process. And so, yes, it can be a learning experience, but I know that regrets quite often have a lot of emotional drain that go with them, and even guilt. And that is part of the reason that we need to really consider how we approach our choices and whether we need to avoid or manage regrets. One of the question is, can we avoid all regrets? And I think that, as commented on the poll and on the post on LinkedIn, that I don't think it's realistic to say that we can avoid all regrets. So I think we have to consider, one aspect of it is to look at ways to avoid them because of the pain and guilt and all that goes with them, and also the cost of the learning experience. But knowing that we cannot avoid regrets completely, then we need to consider, how can we manage regrets? What do we do to avoid the negative result, and how not to get caught up in regrets and let them defeat us. And so we just, again, have to make a number of choices. I do see people that get stuck in regret, and that is not a good place to be. And so we if we have regrets, we need to think about how can we, in a healthy fashion, deal with those regrets. And so one of the things that we can do to deal with those regrets is recognize them, accept them, and move forward. And let's see here. Gladstone makes a comment, says, we must never regret being compassionate and helping others. I agree, Gladstone. And I suppose that that there may be a way or a time where we would regret that. I hope it doesn't happen often, because helping others is a very big part of what we're designed to do. So hopefully we don't. But I think regrets originate in our lives because of priority issues. I see a lot of people that are living with regrets because they still do not prioritize according to what's truly important to them. And it usually shows up in not prioritizing our time. We tend to say we're about this priority, family, or whatever, yet our time is spent earning money, wealth, income, however you want to define it, to a point that we sacrifice family. A lot of broken families over this very issue, in that we don't set those priorities, and we say, okay, well, I am earning a living or making money to take care of my family, but in the process, we do not take care of our family in other ways than just money, and as a result, we lose them. And it's comes back to a priority issue that we need to understand how to live in accordance with what our priorities are. And part of the challenge is that many of us don't take the time to really understand what our priorities are. We think that our priority is based on what someone else did to get somewhere. So just a change of thinking. In fact, Karen makes the comment that may we all change our views about feeling regrets to life purpose, and know that everything leads to greater path. Certainly a change in mindset helps. If we want to avoid regrets, look at them differently. For example, recognize that challenges and adversity is going to come our way, and it's part of what happens. And so having regrets over things that we can't do anything about becomes a priority. One of the exercises that I've shared previously and like to continue to remind people, and it's called a bucket exercise. We have 3 buckets, and our 3 buckets are what we can control, what we can influence, and what we can't control or influence. And so as we go through life, we look at what we see around us, what's happening to us, what's happening to others, and we ask ourselves the question, can I control it? If not, the next question becomes, can I influence it? And then if not that, then the last question is, or last step in the bucket process is, we put it in a bucket that I can't control and influence, and I'm going to let go of it. And I think as we began to get better at that process, we can avoid unnecessary regrets or avoidable regrets so that we have more energy and emotion to deal with the regrets in life that we have to go through and deal with. Dr. Sharma shares one of the most hated words in my vocabulary, which I never like, is to have is regret. So yeah, I understand, Dr. Sharma, that regrets are rarely something that we look at in a positive light. And therefore, I try to avoid them as much as possible. If I have a regret, then the goal after that is to, what can I do with that regret, and to learn from it and make a positive from it, which it can be done. It's a matter of, as Karen says, turning those regrets into life purpose, and there's certain value in that as well. And Gladstone shares, I feel that it is better to regret quickly, since the cost of our mistakes can be irreparable as time progresses. Is it a correct observation? I think so, yes. There is value in immediately dealing with those regrets. 2 reasons. One, the impact as it goes on. For example, one regret that we have, unfortunately, is saying things and then pretty immediately going, oh, wow, I regret having said that. And it is a good idea to immediately address that and deal with it, whether it means apologizing, asking forgiveness, and moving forward from it. And or if it's other regrets, it may be, what do I need to do differently so that I don't end up with that regret again? And part of the value of doing so immediately is that we don't camp there. See, I see a lot of people that go through life totally defeated and frustrated and discouraged because they, for example, and this is again around relationships quite often, is that we regret not having spent more time with someone, or demonstrating our concern, our love for them, or having said something that we shouldn't have done so. If we don't address those things pretty immediately, then we're going to tend to, for lack of a better way to put it, wallowing in it, and it will continue to affect us, and that the emotional and mental and even physical drain and effect of it becomes very negative, to a point, that some people will and even get mentally and emotionally, even physically sick over not addressing regrets. So Gladstone, you make a good point. If we have a regret, don't let it sit. Don't let it just hang out, but really look at it going forward. And Dr. Sharma, talks about trying to avoid those regrets, and I agree. And another comment from Dr. Shama is really um, uh, very salient. Says, I try every opportunity so that I should not regret, which goes to the concept that, again, more times than not, our regrets are not about what we do. I mean, it is possible to do so, but I think that our regrets quite often are um related to what we don't do. And so bear with me here. Our technology today is a little bit peculiar. I apologize. Even when we started the podcast, the technology was such that we weren't originally on LinkedIn. So bear with me here. I'm having to cross reference uh, multiple places here. Welcome, Oh my goodness, Srinivasa. Welcome from Belgium. Glad to have you with us. And get to Zaid's comment. For me, regret is a method of learning towards the future. Yes, it could be painful sometimes. Going to the dentist is painful too, but we still have to go. So learning and moving on, but not to allow it to become bitterness. The cost of bitterness is way more on us. And again, I think, Zaid, what you say is true. And I think it kind of goes back to what Gladstone was asking about, is dealing with regrets immediately. So if we can't avoid them, then address them quickly rather than let them sit and become a negative part of our life, and really tend to take the energy right out of us if we let it. And so, yes, we don't want it to linger. And yes, it will potentially be a source of bitterness and guilt. You know, one of the things about regrets is we can tend to be guilty over it and let the guilt just consume us, and it will turn to either bitterness or potentially despair. Part of the reason that people have depression and mental health issues and emotional problems is because of regrets that they can't let go of. You know, I wish I hadn't done this in my life at this time, and I just can't get beyond it. And so regrets are an interesting concept. I do think that we can look at avoiding regrets by setting priorities, and which, of course, to set priorities means we have to understand what our real priorities are. And that's why I think it's important that we take time and truly do introspection, not just once, but on a regular basis, in order to truly be able to manage and avoid those regrets, and move forward from them, or move forward without them, by making good priority choices. And one of the signs that maybe we need to reevaluate is that if we are always feeling guilty, for example, how we spend our time work wise, if we're always regretting what is going on with our work, and we are, recognizing that we're missing opportunity that later we will regret, it may be that we are not making good priority choices with our life. And quite often it is driven by cultural expectations or cultural pressures. And it's, I think one of the common places we live regrets is with our choice in our work, and how we prioritize that. And so it's a good idea to really evaluate where we're at and what we're doing, what we should be doing. One of the regrets that I see quite a lot in talking with people is regret over education choices. I spoke with a gentleman recently who had earned a criminal justice degree, and he had regrets because he does not use the criminal justice degree. He's actually doing his job that he was working in is landscaping, and it's a good opportunity, and it was doing good for him. But the regret comes in that he had made the choice, and as a result of getting a criminal justice degree, he had gotten student loans and debt, and he had been out of school for 18 years, still paying those student loans, and would be paying them another 15 years. So, yeah, that's another form of regret, and it's based in not considering priorities, not evaluating well, and making choices accordingly. So, one of the things that we need to do is be very intentional in how we make our choices and consider them outside of cultural pressures. I just watch people make choices based on cultural pressure, and it doesn't generally go well. And let's see here. Again, my technology is proving to be interesting. I want to make sure, because I know we have a couple of people here that are showing up as LinkedIn user. By the way, I apologize for that. I'm not sure why this live stream does that, but it does. Gladstone makes comments. Sometimes I feel that others need to educate us before even we start to regret our action. An example could be rude behavior. I agree with you, Gladstone, that I think that one of the ways we can, especially early in our life, maybe avoid regrets is to look to people around us. And that includes, and especially is true with our parents. And I know that parents aren't perfect, and I know there are examples where parents not only aren't perfect, but do horribly wrong. But most of the time, our parents are there. And if we choose to listen to them and seek their wisdom and counsel rather than simply push them away and say, treat them disrespectfully, that's one way to avoid regrets early on. And if it's not our parents, maybe someone else in our family, or someone that comes into our life that can share wisdom for us and give us insight. And being open to that can help us indeed avoid regrets. Another comment from Gladstone, another thought that comes to my mind is that our ego prevents us to regret our misdeeds. Is that a correct perspective? Yes. I find that our ego, our arrogance, our refusal to learn, or our unwillingness to learn, indeed leads to a lot of regrets. And I think that is culturally part of the problem we're dealing with, is that we have such a negative attitude towards people that we perceive as authority or as leadership in our life or whatever, and we resist that. And as a result, we don't learn from those people, and as a result, we have regrets that we didn't have to, because we could have learned from other people's lives. Part of the reason that I really appreciate the engagement by everyone here on Wisdom Seeker Podcast is that we can learn and gain wisdom from each other by taking the time to listen and avoid the idea that somehow I can't learn from others, whoever the others are. one of the things that I made a decision of long time ago, made a priority, is to learn on a daily basis. And part of the foundation of that is recognizing that I can learn from anyone, and quite often from things as well, by observation, by asking, and so on. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is that there was a prophet that God was trying to get his attention, and ultimately God spoke to the prophet through a donkey, through the donkey he was riding. And interesting to me that, our view of a donkey is quite, if you will, not positive, shall we say, that a donkey's a dumb animal and they're stubborn and so on. But even if we are prepared and we're open, we can learn even from a donkey, or, and to put it in other terms, is learning from people around us that we don't maybe have the level of respect that we should, or even, and this is a tough one, is that we can learn even from people that we would perceive as an enemy. For example, one of the things that being very present on LinkedIn and engaging with a lot of people is I have learned that even those that we call trolls, people that really don't have our best interest in mind, and it's evident, and they will make negative or harsh comments or disrespectful comments on a post on LinkedIn or on other social media, that even those people, if we have the right mindset, we can learn from those people as well. And that means having to sort out the value from the harmful parts, but it can be done as well. And and Karen raises a point, says we can learn by observation. Karen says she's a visual learner, and Karen, I understand, because that's my dominant learning style. And indeed, we can learn by observation. One of the practices that I suggest to anyone that is a wisdom seeker really wanting to grow goes back to the challenge we started Wisdom Seeker with back in January, and that is to disconnect, get the noise out of our life, and move away from distractions and noise. And the second step in the process was to observe. And observing can be listening, observing can be visual, as we observe things, and it can be observing by sensing people's thoughts or whatever. So observing includes being visual. And the last step is, once we've disconnected, taken our focus and put it on observing, then what we observe can then be how we go about seeking wisdom. And seeking wisdom is about looking and considering, okay, this means this to me, but what does it mean in the bigger picture? How does it affect not only me? How does it affect the others around me? And then how do I make choices in light of those effects? And that's part of growing in wisdom. In Gladstone comments, there's another dimension that I've experienced. Once we regret and apologize, it is considered a sign of weakness. You're right. Culturally, sometimes that can be the case, that it is by some perceived as weakness. And that's unfortunate, because the strength that we have as people is that we learn and we grow and we accept the responsibility for our mistakes and we apologize. And in my book, for whatever my book is worth, is that is not in weakness at all, but rather it is a place of great strength. The value of that is that when we learn to deal with those regrets and we do apologize for them, that we are released and gain freedom from it so that we can move on. And what I watch is a lot of people that won't apologize, won't forgive, and as a result, they are stuck. And at that point, I have to ask myself, okay, I have learned and grown from a regret or mistake and taken responsibility, apologized, and I'm moving forward in new freedom and having grown. Yet this person that says apologizing is weakness, they're stuck and they're struggling and they're dealing with emotional baggage that they shouldn't. Where is, which is the stronger point to work from? Welcome, Jane. Glad to have you this morning. Zaid makes a comment, says, "Oh no, that's hard to deal with. Sometimes universities, colleges use bad marketing methods to supposedly help students make their decisions, but such decisions would involve high cost of loans. Then regrets set in when students can't find a job in their field of study. But this shouldn't be the student regret. These universities should have a skin in the game towards these loans." It's an interesting topic in terms of responsibilities, Aida. I understand your comment that others should take responsibility, and there is truth in that. For example, when people in our life do things that is harmful to us, they have responsibility for the effect, no doubt. The challenge becomes that if we're going to be strong and grow in who we are and move into, especially as leaders, at some point we have to say, they shouldn't have done that, but I can't let their choices drive what happens with me. And that's where the idea of forgiveness comes in. Forgiveness is more for us than it is for those we are forgiving, because by forgiving those that do things to us, like push us to making a bad choice, forgiveness frees us from the long-term effect of it and keeps whoever they are, from affecting and controlling our lives through that regret. So it's an interesting challenge. And one of the ways that I observe this, and I've even dealt with it in my own life, is as we're growing up, our parents make mistakes and they shouldn't make those mistakes. And quite often they may not even see it as a mistake or even consider that there's a problem. And it can have long-term effect on us. But our key is at some point, we have to look at that regretful situation and take ownership for ourselves and respond accordingly. And the best response in those situations to accept that it happened, own it as part of our life, and then forgive anyone of their involvement in what happened with that, and then learn how to grow from it and recognize that in addition to any hurt or problem, it also gives us an opportunity to grow in character and move forward if we make choices to deal with it appropriately. So it's a tug of war there in terms of how people's bad choices affect us. And one of the best ways to have regrets in regard to that is to be unforgiving and to get stuck in that blaming other people. And because in the end, we're the ones that's going to suffer the most from that regret, not the person that should be regretting it. And so taking ownership and addressing that for ourselves becomes important. Jane makes a comment. It is sometimes difficult for many people to find a silent place, but it is so powerful. Sadly, some people are afraid of silence. They rely on TVs, radios, and other devices to have constant noise. And you are very correct, Jane, that that is part of our current challenge as people and as culture, in that we are allowing a lot of noise in our lives, and especially, and I pick on this group a lot because I think they are worthy of this, and that is our current news media, because they are not only uh, putting out information, but they are trying to affect our thought process. And one of the best things we can do is to manage to shut that out and get alone. I agree that part of the problem is we're afraid to get alone, because when we do that, one of the things that happens is our regrets become evident to us. You know, we realize that we've made choices that weren't best, and that can be cause guilt, it can cause shame, it can cause pain. But the problem or the challenge is that to not address those things will mean several things. One is that emotionally, mentally, and ultimately physically, it will affect us. It will even cause us to be unhealthy in the end. The other thing is that, excuse me, that we avoid those times because we know that in the end, that rather than it being someone else's problem or someone else's cause, that it's our own, and that is hard to deal with, because we think that if we make a mistake or if we make a wrong choice, that our value is diminished. And what I try to remind people, and I will continue to do so because I think this is a key point, is that our value as a person, as a human, has been established. And I remind people our value comes from our Creator, and it's not something that we earn. It is not some, and therefore we can't lose it. It's not something others give us, and therefore can take it away. It is given by our Creator, and that value, because of our Creator's love for us, is not going to take it away. So once we quit trying to prove our value, then we can face our mistakes better, because our mistakes don't cause us to be less valuable. They may affect us in other regards. In fact, our mistakes will affect us, but not dealing with them because they're uncomfortable just compounds the issue. And so, getting silent, getting time in prayer and meditation, and away from distractions is such a valuable way to grow. And by the way, it's a way to also help us avoid having regrets, because we begin to get wisdom, we begin to see things and learn from the mistakes we make. Um, and then let's see, again, I apologize. Srinivasa shares a thought that regret is perceived as a punishment too. Uh, yes, I understand regret, guilt can sometimes feel like a punishment. I think that what we have to shift our mindset is that regret is not a punishment, but rather a function of our design that helps us to grow and hopefully not stay there. Welcome, Radic Radikilico. Again, I apologize if I mispronounce your name. I try very hard to respect each person and their name, but welcome. Glad to have you with us. Um, Zaid makes a comment. I agree, but the government or whoever gave us the loan doesn't forgive. These loans could go on for years. You are correct, Zaid. In fact, the story I was sharing about the gentleman I spoke with recently, his comment was that he will ultimately pay on his student loans he had already been paying for 18 years, and he would be paying an additional 15. But I think the key is that the government, I think, is an error in making that such an easy thing. But part of it is we've got to take responsibility for setting priorities and understanding uh, about formal education and what place it plays in our lives. And I could go on for a long time about that because it's a part of what I do, and it's where I've learned as a former teacher, and all, and could go into that. But at the end of the day, we as a culture have got to reevaluate the priority of formal education for a number of reasons, and one of them is, as you have shared, is the cost and the fact that so many make choices to go in debt over it. And I will tell you, for many, it is a bad choice. It rarely pays back, especially currently. Again, I can spend hours on that, but today we're dealing with the regrets. Key is, if we do, as Jane talked about, and we disconnect and we get away from some of the distraction, we have a better chance to understand those choices and make better choices in regards to priority of who we are, what we are, where we want to be, and things like that. Welcome, Richard. Glad to have you with us. Appreciate you joining. Richard makes a comment that regret is a feeling. Feelings can and do pass. Um, I agree on some level, Richard, that regret is a feeling, but I think it's also a recognition of making a bad choice, of not setting a priority. And indeed, the feeling related to it eventually will pass. But if we have feelings that we don't address, one of the downsides is that they will affect us long term. Just like the feeling of hurt is indeed a feeling, and it will lessen with time. But if we don't address hurt and pain and disappointment and those emotions, eventually they will have an effect on us. And that's part of what's going on with our current culture. Is we're just told, well, especially men, don't let your emotions drive you, don't let them affect you. Well, we have to make choices at times to ignore our feelings, at least for a time. But in the end, especially deeply felt feelings, deeply seated feelings that are not addressed, ultimately come back and affect us very negatively. And I will share out of my own personal life that feeling of hurt and sense of not measuring up that I felt dealing with my parents, especially my father early on, had a profound effect on me, even though I had logically explained that I knew my parents loved me, and because I knew that to be true, and therefore I just ignored the pain that I had experienced. And ultimately, though, it affected me and my relationships. And it wasn't until I came back around and addressed some of that hurt and that emotion that I was able to be released from it. So I appreciate that feelings can come and go, and they certainly will. And feelings shouldn't control us. But unresolved feelings, hurt, disappointment, regret, it can also be harmful, and it doesn't just necessarily go away. So we have to be careful not to just ignore that feeling. Sometimes we have to just recognize it, accept it, and move on. Other times we have to deal with it and figure out what do we do to effectively move forward. And one of those keys, and I shared this earlier, but one of those keys that helps us to address those feelings and emotions that we face is to be proactive and actually forgive. Because there are times where we are hurt and we shouldn't be, and people have done things to us. And rather than allow that to, become an influence in our life unnecessarily, we need to address it and move forward. And so, yeah, feelings will pass, and we shouldn't live based on our feelings because they come and go and they're up and down. But to ignore them and pretend like they don't exist because they are feelings is also something that we have to be careful of, because they will impact us. Um, and good tip from Richard that is true is to recognize if you've made the choice to go into debt with student loans, that there are ways to mitigate it some and to overcome as much as possible by taking time to work with the lenders and so on. Key point here is that regrets are something that we face. I think that our initial goal should be to try to avoid them by making better, thoughtful, intentional choices that that help us to avoid making choices that come with regrets. And so that's why I think that as we look at our priorities, our values, consider those things that cause us regret. And the example that I used in particular, and this one is really common, is how we relate to family and friends, and how often we come back around to regretting that, especially at the loss of those friends or family to death. They will cause us to go, I wish I hadn't said that. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I'd taken more time with that person, and so on. And the way to avoid that is to consider our priorities now. If our pursuit of wealth is going to cause us regrets, maybe we need to make an adjustment. Maybe we need to reprioritize there. And then those regrets that we can avoid, partly because we're not perfect and we're going to make mistakes, then I believe it was Gladstone that made a good point, is as soon as we have those regrets, take steps to address them, take steps to manage them. And one of the best first steps is, if we are the cause of that regret, then accept it, own it, deal with it, and move forward. If and therefore that means asking forgiveness, apologizing, adjusting, or so on. If we're not the source of that regret, that it's someone else, then the best thing we can do is accept that it happens and give forgiveness to that other person. By the way, they may never ask for it. It's something we choose to do. And then lastly, just consider, do we have regrets that we have stuffed down emotionally and that is affecting us? And move forward with bringing those forward and addressing them. Don't just live with it, if you will. Figure out how to manage it and move forward from it. Zaid, thanks for being here, and have a great day. I understand your timing. But at the end of the day, I think we should avoid regrets as much as possible. And then if we have regrets, which we will, learn how to manage them well. Whether it's regrets in relationships, regrets in choices, then own them and either give forgiveness, receive forgiveness, and make choices to change to avoid them going forward. And so regrets is something that we all face. And I hope that we will take the time to disconnect and get away from our distractions and the noise that keeps us from addressing these regrets and figure out ways to deal with the ones we have and look at reprioritizing, gaining wisdom and how to avoid it. One of the values of wisdom is if we gain wisdom, quite often we learn how to avoid regretful choices, regretful situations by making better and wiser choices. So, thanks everyone. I appreciate your time this morning, and I appreciate all of you that are regulars here on Wisdom Seeker Live. I hope that you'll invite others. And by the way, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I know we just finished the Thanksgiving holiday season. I hope and pray that you don't have regrets from your holiday season, but if you do, that you will then recognize, accept, and deal with them immediately so that holidays don't become a regretful time, but rather a time of positive and joy with family, friends, and so on. So thanks, everyone. God bless. Have an amazing week. And we will see you next week, Monday morning, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And I will get an announcement out about the next topic. If you have suggestions for topics and want to put them in comments, whether you're viewing live or if you review the recording, feel free to put those in there, and we will certainly consider that as a possible topic. Again, God bless. Take care. Have an amazing week. See you next week. Bye.